Welcome to Mackinac Island Moments, hosted by lifelong Islander Jason St. Ange. Through conversations and interviews with fellow island locals and residents, Jason will bring you the real stories and characters that define life on the island. Whether you're a seasoned visitor, new to Mackinac Island, or even an islander yourself, you'll be sure to learn firsthand about the island with Jason on Mackinac Island Moments.
And welcome to another edition of the Mackinac Island Moments podcast, the only podcast brought to you from Mackinac Island by an actual year-round islander. Folks, this is episode number 9, lucky number 9. You know, the weather's been kind of fickle lately to get you brought up to speed and how our spring is going. It's been pretty cool. In fact, this morning when I woke up, the temperature was sunny, but the temperature was only about 29 degrees, and that's a little on the cool side for late April. Of course, it's not raining day in and day out, so we'll take it. So it's been it was a very mild winter, and it's been followed up by a very cool spring. And we'd prefer to have a real winter, at least I would, and a real spring, but this is the hand we're dealt this year. We can't control it, so we'll just move forward. So today, on this episode, it was inevitable. We're going to have to talk about horses. And, of course, we have to delve into this area. And I think something that I should mention is that the horses are here year-round. While a bulk of the herd is shipped 30 miles north to farms for winter pasture, a small amount, maybe 12 to 20 or so, they remain here on the island to keep the deliveries going and the taxi service. You know, the drays still deliver, goods and food year-round and construction materials and such. So there are 12 to 20, and maybe I'm off. There could be 24, maybe pushing 30 horses. I'm not 100% sure, but in the summer, there's upwards of 500 horses. So when I say a small amount, 20 or 24 would still be a small amount. Why do they ship the horses in the winter? We get that a lot. Well, it's easier to take the horses to their feed than to continue to ship the feed to the horses, if that makes sense. All the hay that the horses eat all year is grown adjacent or on the farms where the horses spend their winter. And so, of course, it's easier to send the horses up there for the winter. Just because the horse is done working on the island, it still has to get, 3 hots in a cot, as they say. It needs a place to stay, and it needs to be fed every day. So it's easier to send the horses once in the fall up to the farm and then feed them there, as opposed to trying to bring the hay here. And of course, with the winter, you never know what you're going to get, if the ferries will be laid up early or there won't be sufficient ice. So overall, it's just an easier move to operate that way. So let me disqualify myself about any horse talk here. And that's right, I said disqualify myself. I'm not qualified to talk about horses, as believe it or not, I haven't been on a horse since 1981. I can't ride them, drive them, hitch them, talk to them. I'm a big fan. I give horses their space. All I know about horses is you put gas in them and they go. I sure appreciate the men and women who can, drive them and rope them and ride them and wrangle them, but that's not me. I'm not a horse guy. I ride my bicycle, which I refer to as my iron horse. But, later in the podcast, we're going to be joined by a guy who can do all that and more, and he helps look after the operation here on the island. And in fact, he's an expert in his field, and he's a fun guy to talk to, and he's going to tell us all about the operations of what is known as the largest commercial livery service in the world. So it's kind of exciting. So stand by. We're gonna have Dale with us here, Dale Peterson here with us shortly. I was also asked, what becomes of all the horse exhaust, if you will, or the poo. I'm sure, Mike Rowe, when he was here doing Dirty Jobs, he handled that question quite extensively. It was probably 15 years ago or so. And, he summarized it pretty well and how the whole system works. And, just to kind of brush on that, the downtown streets are swept manually. You see these guys with the wheelbarrows or the bicycles with the hopper on the back, and they sweep and shovel it. And it's a tough job, and they work all day, every day. Cleaning up behind 500 horses is no small affair. And then in the outer boroughs, they use a horse-drawn sweeper machine. It was kind of developed by a local guy here, and they drive around every day, all day, and they ride over it, and it sweeps it up into a hopper where it goes to central collection. We'll get to that in a second. I should also mention downtown every night, in the middle of the night, while you're all sleeping, a crew goes out with hoses and flushes down the streets because the other byproduct of horses can't be swept up. And so they flush the streets. So if you ever notice, there isn't any stain or residue from horse urine from the day before, because every night it gets it's flushed down with hoses. So the streets are fresh. And those guys work really hard too, and that's not an easy job, but it's certainly appreciated. So the manure is essentially picked up and then put into these large wagons called manure wagons, and then that's brought out to the Island Recycling Center. And let me tell you, that operation out there is a whole nother episode. We'll probably have to go out there and talk to the guys. The island does not have a landfill. All of the waste is shipped off the island in the summer pretty much daily. But we do have a recycling facility out there. It's pretty extensive, and we have a compost wasting system. And I'm probably not using the correct terminology, but the guys out there do composting with food scraps from the restaurants and hotels, and then they mix it with the manure, and then they let it sit for I'm guessing about a year. And anyway, the byproduct becomes really rich, great soil, and the gardeners love it. And the grounds crews in the various hotels that have, extensive grounds, they get that soil and they use it. And so it's really kind of I don't want to say circle of life, but because it's not life, it's manure. But you get what I'm saying. It's the stuff gets reused, turned into compost, and then they grow flowers and such with it. So. It's pretty neat, and that in a nutshell is what happens. Like I said, we'll probably have to head out to the solid waste handling facility and talk with those guys before the summer's up, and it's pretty fascinating, actually, and how much work they have to accomplish. But that's what happens with the manure. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, a lot of the old farmers, they say it's good to put on the strawberries. But, I wouldn't know because I prefer whipped cream on mine. So, back to Mike Rowe when he was here. That was a fun time we had with him. He has to be, to date, the most down-to-earth celebrity I've ever encountered on the island or anywhere else. And if you'll notice, if you follow his show or the reruns of the show, and even sometimes when he's doing the round table on Deadliest Catch, and these are all on Discovery Channel, every now and then he wears a Mackinac Island Fire Department t-shirt and on the air. And the story behind that is while he was here doing his big show on the island, he was here for 3 or 4 days, and we got to be friends, and we'd meet up at night and sample some of the local fare at some of the island taverns. And one night we were sitting at the bar in the Yankee Rebel and sampling out some of the local fare. And he said, how does a guy get one of those Mackinac Island Fire Department t-shirts? And I said, well, you're in luck. I know exactly how a guy can get one. So I ran up here to the Market Street Fire Station and grabbed him one, brought it back. And he said, can I get one for my girlfriend too? And I said, this is a smart guy. He's going to remember to bring home a souvenir, and on top of it, one he doesn't even have to pay for. So anyway, that's how we got our t-shirts, that when you see him wear those on the air, and or at least mostly in reruns. I haven't seen him do it lately. That's the story behind that. So good guy, a lot of fun. Everyone on the island really enjoyed it, and he was here. He was visible, hung out with the locals, hung out in the bars. Just real approachable, down-to-earth guy. So, our special guest today, Dale Peterson. This guy knows everything you need to know about horses and then some, and we welcome him to the show. All right, Dale Peterson is on the show, on the podcast with us. Dale, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
That's great. I know you're going to answer a pile of questions. First and foremost, can you just kind of introduce, how long you've been here and what's your official title and what is it you do here in the day?
Well, right now my title is barn supervisor. I arrived in 1984. I come for 1 year to really party. And, I haven't left since, really. Met my wife 10 years later. And I'm still here. 41 years.
Must have been a hell of a party.
It was pretty fun, yeah.
So, we're going to talk about what goes on. We're up at the big barns up here. That's what most of the locals call them, the big barns. It's where the central hub, if you will, of all of the carriage tour, MacDonald carriage tour horses kind of congregate or work out of. Dale, there's people in these barns 24 hours a day, I presume. And when does the lion's share of the employees start to show up in the morning?
Generally, they start coming in about 7 o'clock, 7 to 8 o'clock, depending on what they're driving for the day.
Okay, and then, so there are people around the clock, though.
Oh, absolutely. We have a night crew that feeds the horses, takes care of them, cleans the manure.
Right on. I got to ask this question, everybody that's not in the know with horses. You have roughly 500 horses up here. How are you able to tell them apart once their bridles and all that comes off and they're out in the pen?
Well, most of them are pretty easy. I used to know them all, but anymore I just let the girls worry about it.
Right. So there is somebody on staff who can walk into a corral full of horses and name them right off.
Absolutely. Judy's really good at it. Judy Bishop.
Sure. Oh, she's a legend.
Yes.
How often do you have a horse that just can't cut it here? You brought it to the island to work and it's not right for the place. Does that ever happen?
Absolutely. We get about 30 to 40 new horses here every year. And anywhere from 6 to 8 of those will not work out.
Really?
Yeah, some of them just too high strung.
So they just go back to the farm, try to re-break them, or?
Well, they either re-break them, send them to charm school, as we call it, or they just pedal them off to somebody else.
Oh, excellent. And one thing I should mention, there are other horse companies on the island. There's private horses, and then there's Golf Livery, of course, which operates the riding stables. And one thing I want to mention is there's no rivalry amongst these employees. When there's an issue with a horse, they all come running. They all come to help. I don't think you see that in a lot of other businesses. I wonder if McDonald's deep fryers went down. I don't see Burger King hollering, bring your stuff over here and we'll fry it for you. But boy, you horse folks sure help each other out, and it's pretty neat.
Yeah, when there's trouble with any type of horse, it doesn't matter whose horse it is. You just go and help.
Right. That's pretty amazing. So you get in the day. Give me a day in the life of a typical day in the life in the big barns here.
Okay. Well, I arrive usually about 6:30 in the morning, and I will talk with the night crew about any problems, sick horses, plumbing issues. Everything is okay there. Then I will check the forecast, communicate with the farm crew to decide on what type of hay we want to get that day. Check our oats, see if we need to order any from the feed mill in Pickford. We go through about 300 tons of oats per season.
Wow.
40,000 square bales and 2,000 round bales.
Wow. So does hay come every day pretty much then?
Usually 5 or 6 days a week.
And what's a daily shipment of hay look like, tonnage-wise or bale-wise?
Usually we get 3 to 4 wagon loads, and there's about 70 bales per wagon.
Wow, that's amazing. So let me ask you this question. We posted up on our Facebook page that we're going to be here today, and we asked folks for questions they could ask. Is there a chance you'll do a little Q&A with me here, a little rapid-fire Q&A?
Certainly.
All right. So we've got these rapid-fire questions that came in off social media, off Facebook. What does it take, from James, what does it take to keep the herd content?
Keep them well fed, and they like to work. They'd be happy.
Well, I think like everybody else.
Pretty much.
So April asks, from the photo I posted, is that a Clydesdale, and is that your favorite breed?
No, that is not a Clydesdale, and my favorite breed would be Percherons.
Okay, and primarily what are the breeds?
Percherons and Belgians mostly here with our draft horses.
Sure, that makes sense. Do they all get along, or do you have to watch who they can work with?
Absolutely, you have to watch. Some of them are pretty cantankerous, and they will only work with certain horses.
So, again, like people.
Absolutely.
Okay. Jane Hoover asks, how often do the horses get their shoes changed, and what kind of shoes do they wear?
The shoes are changed 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the horse. And we use some steel shoes, also some rubber shoes.
Oh, okay. Julia Stern says, do you breed them?
Well, only when we're lonely.
You made me lose my place, Dale. Bo Belinsky wants to know if you know the name of every horse. I think we covered that. And he wants to know, when's the last time you actually drove a horse?
That would have been last summer I drove a horse.
Well,
Several times, actually. But
there you go, Bo. Carrie Ott wants to know how many there are. I said 500. Wow. What do you think is the actual number?
500 probably total on the island. We have about 350 here at the peak of the season.
Okay. Here's an important question. Cindy asks, are the farriers, which for you folks who don't know, those are the folks who put shoes on horses, blacksmiths, farriers, kind of one and the same, and the veterinarians, are they on staff 24/7 and right here on the island?
Absolutely, there is. We have 3 full-time farriers here that live on the island, and then we have rotating veterinarians that are always here.
Wow. Our buddy John DeRocha, of course, had to ask why the long face. That's an old Mackinac joke. Folks, you guys, you're all going to get exposed to all these hundreds of years of Mackinac Island jokes, and we sure like when we have a fresh audience. We get to spring them on everybody. So Teresa wants to know, what's the human to staff horse ratio?
That is about 3 to 1.
Okay. That's 3 horses per
individual, yes.
Wow. That's an amazing amount of overhead. Susan wants to know, how do you know which harnesses go to which horse when they all come back in the spring? Is there a marking of sorts? Or?
Yes, we tag the horses with paper tags in the fall, left, right, horses' names, also some identifying marks. That way it makes it so much simpler in the spring.
Wow, these have been great questions. I'm sorry we couldn't hang on for more, but Dale's a busy guy. Is there anything you want to tell us about the operations here that a lot of people don't know? Well, that you haven't already told them in the last 5 minutes, I should say.
No, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Okay, and here's questions I've been asking all of our folks we've had on the podcast. This talk about the island being haunted, what are your thoughts on the island being haunted?
I am not a believer in that.
Yeah, and of course I have to ask, your favorite celebrity in your time here on the island that you've met or encountered?
Well, we touched on it earlier there, Mike Rowe. That was a fun time with him. I guess I met Charles Woodson down there at the yacht club several years ago. With the...
Oh, you hoity-toity down at the yacht club, Dale?
Yeah, somebody gave us tickets.
Oh, that's Sir Charles Woodson.
Yeah, yes.
Sir Charles Woodson.
And then the other one was George Bush Sr. was here. I was put on with some other people as horse detail just for safety purposes.
Sure, that's pretty good crew of celebrities, that's for sure. And you mentioned the safety aspects, and one thing I did want to mention is that your company employs people downtown that are in plain clothes, just there to keep an eye on the horses in case any issues arise. And the reason, folks, those guys are in plain clothes is if they wore any sort of uniform, they would get bothered with questions like, where are the bathrooms, where should we eat, where's Fort Mackinac, and that sort of stuff. So these guys are down there just keeping an eye on everything and the horses, and they do so kind of disguised, if you will, just so they can pay absolute close attention and not get interrupted with questions. So that's why we're up here in the barnyard talking to Dale, because we closed the door and put the shades down so he's not able to look out the window for a few minutes while he answered these questions, which has really helped. And I can't thank you enough for being here, Dale, and I hope you had some fun.
I did. This was pretty neat.
And once again, folks, I'm Jason St. Onge with the Mackinac Island Moments podcast, brought to you from Mackinac Island. And everybody, good day.
Well, I left my dear old Newfie home in the year of 64. Went to work as a carriage boy upon the Mackinac shore. We go to work at 8 o'clock and work from there till 5. At supper time you'll see us come with horseshit in our eye. We'll eat when we are hungry and we'll drink when we are dry. Tobacco when we wanna smoke, it's heaven when we die. If ever I stay on Mackinac, it'll have to be my own. I'm just a plain old Newfie, I'm 1,000 miles from home. Well, I met a girl on Mackinac and I liked her very well. One evening we went for a walk up to the Grand Hotel. She ordered up some old champagne with good old Johnny Rye. And when I looked her over, she had horseshit in her eye. So we'll eat when we are hungry and we'll drink when we are dry. Tobacco when we want to smoke, it's heaven when we die. If ever I stay on Mackinac, it'll have to be my own. I'm just a plain old Newfie, I'm 1,000 miles from home. One evening after supper time when all our work was done, we headed for the Mustang, 'twas there we had some fun. Now Broder came to our table with his white shirt and his tie, and when we looked then over, he had horseshit in his eye. So we'll eat when we are hungry and we'll drink when we are dry. Tobacco when we we wanna smoke, it's heaven when we die. If ever I stay on Mackinac, it'll have to be my own. I'm just a plain old busy, I'm 1,000 miles from home. Well, now my song is ended, friends, I leave you with glad joy. Never let your sons or daughters work on Mackinac Isle. To see us coming off from work would make our girlfriends cry, with our hard hats and our glasses and horseshit in our eyes. Well, I left my dear old Newfie home in the year of 64. Went to work as a carriage boy upon the Mackinac shore. We go to work at 8 o'clock and work from there till 5. At supper time you'll see us come with horseshit in our eyes. We'll eat when we are hungry and we'll drink when we are dry. Tobacco when we wanna smoke, it's heaven when we die. If ever I stay on Mackinac, it'll have to be my own. I'm just a plain old Newfie, I'm 1,000 miles from home. Well, I met a girl on Mackinac and I liked her very well. One evening we went for a walk up to the Grand Hotel. She ordered up some old champagne with good old Johnny Rye. And when I looked her over, she had horseshit in her eye. So we'll eat when we are hungry and we'll drink when we are dry. Tobacco when we wanna smoke, it's heaven when we die. If ever I stay on Mackinac, it'll have to be my own. I'm just a plain old Newfie, I'm 1,000 miles from home. One evening after supper time when all our work was done, headed for the Mustang, 'twas there we had some fun. Now Broder came to our table with his white shirt and his tie, and when we looked then over, he had horseshit in his eye. So we'll eat when we are hungry and we'll drink when we are dry. Tobacco when we wanna smoke, it's heaven when we die. If ever I stay on Mackinac, it'll have to be my own. I'm just a plain old busy, I'm 1,000 miles from home. Well, now my song is ended, friends, I leave you with glad joy. Never let your sons or daughters work on Mackinac Isle. To see us coming off from work would make our girlfriends cry, with our hard hats and our glasses and horseshit in our